You doing math? I got you. Okay, so let's set this one up. The first number is 183, and the first number goes on the inside. So 183 goes on the inside. My second number is 4, so 4 goes on the outside. Remember, my strategy is whenever you're doing long division, you list the multiples of the divisor. So I'm going to count by 4 and make a list on the left side. We have 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32. All right, then I ask myself, if I count by 4, will I ever say 1? No, look at the list, you never say 1. So that means 1 needs air support. Who provides that air support? The number right next to it. And so it's not a 1, it's not an 8, it's a 18. If I count by 4, will I ever say 18 without going over? We have our list, so let's go ahead and see. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, that's too much. And so 4 goes into 18 4 times. I will go ahead and put a 4 at the top. Remember, we're going to put on top of the 8, not the 1, because the 1 needed air support. How are you going to put something on top of something that needs support?
Don't do that to me.
Put a 4 on top of the 8. And then I'll say 4 times 4 is 16. And I'm going to go ahead and subtract that. And when I subtract that, I get 2. I'm going to ask those questions again. If I count by 4, will I ever say 2? No. That means this 2 needs air support. Who provides that air support? You'll notice the very next number is 3. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that down. It's not a 2, it's not a 3, it's a 23. So if I count by 4, will I ever say 23 without going over? Let's go ahead and do our multiples. So we'll say 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. That's too much. And so 4 goes into 23 5 times. So I put a 5 on top. And then I ask myself, 4 times 5 is 20. So I go ahead and subtract 20 from the 23. And so when you do that, you have 3. Now this problem has a remainder. So in elementary school, we used to be like, oh, you just put a remainder and I'm done.
We don't want decimals, silly. You have to get rid of it. We're not in elementary.
And so how do you get rid of this remainder? So we say, hey, no more remainders. We don't mess with that. Annexing zeros back to back. So I'm going to go ahead and annex the 0 back to back. But you'll notice I changed the value. I went from having 183 to now having 1,830. And so the part is no more remainders. We don't mess with that. Annexing zeros back to back. Don't change the value. That's a no. I just changed the value. So how do I not change the value? By putting a decimal point right.
Yo, you know that's the spawn point, right?
And so now what does that do? It prevents the number from changing, and now I have air support. That's the whole purpose, right? And so if I count by 4, will I ever say 3? No. So 3 needs air support. Who provides it? There's a number there. So we're going to go ahead and bring it down. And so it's not a 3, it's not a 0, it's a 30. So I'm going to go ahead and say 4 goes into 30 how many times? If I count by 4, what's the closest to 30 without going over? 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32. That's too much. So 4 goes into 30 7 times. So I'm going to go ahead and put a 7 on top. Then I ask myself, what is 4 times 7? Well, 4 times 7 is 28. And if I do the math, you'll notice that when 28 to 30, I just 2 more. Unfortunately, I did not get rid of the remainder. I mean, am I done? No. You keep going. What is the song? Remember we said, hey, no more remainders. We don't mess with that. Annexing zeros back to back. That's the part we need to do. You need to annex another 0. You keep doing it. Back to back. Don't change the value. That's a no. See, I didn't change the value. We're good so far. So we're going to go ahead and be like, if I count by 4, will I ever say 2? No. 2 needs air support. Who provides that air support? That's 0. So go ahead and bring it down. It's not a 2. It's not a 0. It's a 20. All right. If I count by 4, will I ever say 20 without going over? I mean, obviously you can see, but let's go ahead and do it on our finger. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. Exactly. So 5 goes into 20 exactly 5 times. So I put 5 on top. Then I'm going to ask myself, well, what is 4 times 5? 4 times 5 is 20, and so I subtract. And if I subtract 20 minus 20, you'll notice it's a 0. And the end of that is you leave them with a 0, that's a no-show. And so that is how you get rid of the remainder. Let me tell you one more time. How do you get rid of a remainder? No more remainders. We don't mess with that. Annexing zeros back to back. Don't change the value. That's a no. Leave them with a 0. That's a no-show. That's a 0. We left them with a 0. That's a no-show. I'm not quite done yet, because the last thing you have to do is you got to think about the Jeffersons. And what do you do with the decimal? You moving on up. We finally got a piece of that pie. Oh my God, that decimal kind of looks like a pie, don't you think? What if I'm given a decimal? It doesn't matter. What you're going to do is you're going to take that first number and put it on the inside. So I'm going to go ahead and put 6 and 43 hundredths on the inside. And the second number, which is the divisor, goes on the outside. Once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and create a list of multiples of the divisor. So I'm going to go ahead and say 25, 50, 75, 100, 125, 150, and 175. All right, and then I'm going to ask myself, if I count my 25, will I ever say 6? You can see clearly it's a no. So then 6 needs what? 6 needs air support. Who provides that air support? The very next number to the right. So it's not a 6, it's not a 4, it's a 64. If I count by 25, will I ever say 64 without going over? We're going to go ahead and see. 25, 50, 75. That's too much. So I put one finger down, and 6 goes into 25 goes into 64 2 times. So I'm going to put a 2 on top of the 4. Then I ask myself, what is 25 times 2? 25 times 2 is 50. I'm going to go ahead and subtract. When I subtract, I have 4 minus 0 is 4. 6 minus 5 is 1. Okay, if I count by 25, will I ever say 14? No, that means 14 needs air support. Who provides that air support? The very next number, which is 3. So we're going to go ahead and be like, it's not a 14, it's not a 3, it's 143. And so I count by 25, and I try to get to 143 without going over. And from my list, you can see it'll be 125. So I'll go ahead and put 125, but the question now becomes how? How did I go from 25 to 125? What you could always do is you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm gonna put a 5 on top, and then I'm gonna go ahead and do my subtraction problem. And so we have 3 minus 5 we can't do, so we're gonna regroup. This 4 becomes a 3, this 3 becomes a 13. and 13 minus 5 will give me 8. 3 minus 2 will give me 1. You'll notice I have another remainder. How do you get rid of a remainder? We say, hey, no more remainders. We don't mess with that. Annexing zeros back to back. I'm going to add a 0. I'm going to annex a 0. But when I annex a 0, understand I'm not really changing the value. Why? Because the decimal point is already there. So I can add as many zeros as possible and I will not change the value. So I'm good. And so I go ahead and bring the next number down. And so now I say 25 goes in 180. I mean, if you want, you can add on to this list, which is 200. And so 25 goes into 180. Well, let's see. We have 25, 50, 75, 100, 125, 150, 175, 200. That's too much. So we'll put that one finger down and you'll notice 25 goes into 187 times. So I'm going to go ahead and put a 7 on top. And then I'm going to go ahead and say 25 times 7 is 175. How did I get that so quickly? Well, you have your multiples, right? The 7th one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so with that being said, we're going to go ahead and subtract this. 0 minus 5 you cannot do, so you regroup or borrow. This 8 becomes a 7. This one becomes a 10. 10 minus 5 is 5. 7 minus 7, so that cancels out. But unfortunately, I still have a remainder. So we say, hey, no more remainders. We don't mess with that. Annexing zeros back to back. Let's go ahead and annex another 0. When you annex a 0, you now can say, oh, 25. If I come out 25, I'll never say 5. That means 5 needs air support. You have another number that can provide that air support. And that number is 0, so you bring that down. It's not a 5, it's not a 0, it's a 50. So I'm going to come out 25 and get to 50. So 25, 50. That's exactly 2 times. So I'll put a 2 on top. And then I'll say 25 times 2 is 50. And so 50 minus 50 is 0. And so leave them with a 0. That's a no-show. Almost done. Remember, these are dividing decimals, right? And so the last thing you have to remember is the Jeffersons. What do I mean by that? Moving on up, we finally got a piece of that pie. You see this decimal? You bring it straight up. Straight up. And so our answer is 0.2572? No. You'll notice the whole number is missing. So you don't leave it blank, you represent it. And how do you represent nothing? You put a 0. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my final answer. 0.2572.